Thank you, everyone. So the saying goes, people save the best for the last, the best for the last.
We're here.
We are here. Hopefully, we'll drive some value. What happened here, though, was a year ago when the Logicens team, and we were talking about this year's conference, which is actually, I think, a very good upgrade over the last year conference, so kudos to the team. Good job with the conference. We were talking about us coming together and presenting here, and that time, a year ago, this seemed like a very interesting topic. How do we design flexible models that help us win deals and scale? Somehow, in the last 1 year, how technology has evolved, and we are talking about AI and agents, it seems very old news. So, as a matter of fact, James and I were just talking behind that I'm so glad that we didn't just stick to that agenda, because otherwise, many of the presentations that happened before us would have meant ours would have been total crap, because you saw so much better information there, whether it was from what Salesforce is doing, whether it was from our friend at Price.io is doing. There's so many good ways to think about how should we think about a hybrid pricing model, how should we monetize AI, that we thought that instead of focusing on those things, how about we target and zone in our audience here, which is generally the billing team, the FinOps team, the enablement team for the revenue teams, the enablement team for the GTM teams. What do you guys do day in, day out? And how do you make sure that you are pushing the ball forward as this craziness around you settles? So our hope today is that we will share with you in true consulting fashion a framework or two which will help you become more empowered in your jobs as someone who enables GTM motions, as someone who is part of the machine that drives revenue forward, so that next time if someone asks you, I think he's still here, Sangram, if someone asks you what GTM is or who is in GTM team, you all can raise your hand more confidently. So with that, we'll start talking a little bit about us. We, both of us are part of a commercial excellence team in KPMG. Many of the people who got on the stage here and many of you in the crowd are our partners. Some of you are our clients. We help companies think through how to monetize, both from a strategy, design, and the tech enablement point of view, innovation. And in doing so, we have learned some lessons, which we are very excited to share with you as a team. So as we go forward, the thing we wanted to talk the most about it is, let's talk about the back end. Cheesy, but what does it really mean? If we move a few years into the past, when I was a young software engineer, I took a lot of pride in this thing called SDLC, Software Development Life Cycle. Waterfall was the jazz. We all knew how to develop products, take them to market, go sell, and make money. And then Agile came up. It shook up a lot of things, but the world that we still operate looks more or less like this. What that means is, if you think about our go-to-market engine, and we saw 8 circles on a circle, what we are talking about is there is a group in most of our organizations which plays a role in discovery of the needs. What is it that we as a business can go build something and monetize? It generally consists of someone who's doing something in strategy, someone who plays a role in product management, engineering, etc. And sometimes marketing plays a role in there too. Sometimes it doesn't. But that's the team that's responsible for discovery. They do something, they inform the builders. Who are the builders? These are the engineers who build the product, which is responsible to make the money. We'll take it to market. We think there's a market out there. Let's go build and make some money. They sometimes, if we are fortunate, work with BizOps organization to start understanding how will this actually work, right? Let's think about the strategy. We've got that, but how will we operationalize it? And some wise guy from engineering also thinks that, hey, how about we talk to sales at this point of time? Let's see what they think about this capability, right? So it's still very inside out. We're building products. Fortunately, we have started to bring in marketing. We're talking to sales. And then we launch. We do some testing, call some smart consultants from KPMG. They do some strategy work for you, and you launch. And then what you realize is that we have started selling things, promising things in the market. If we are a public company, we have announced it way ahead of anything being feasible, but we didn't really think about execution, right? And this group that's sitting here, many of us sit in that room, in that box, where we are the team, whether we are in finance, whether we are in customer success, RevOps, or in that age-old team which was called, support, which carries the burden of what has been now sold. So that's all good. Seems like, an agile process should have helped us move forward, especially in this age of AI/agent-led disruption. This happens on steroids. What I mean by that is features are being built day in, day out. There is insane democratization in terms of discovery and build and how soon you can take features and capabilities to market. And unfortunately, the execution layer, the layer that's mostly represented by us here in the room and many of the tech players here, including Logisense, is waiting to be brought into the table. Right? There's a huge risk that many of our clients who we work with are signing up for, because uncontrolled innovation creates real risk. We heard from Google as well. It has material impact on what you are promising to your customers and how you will actually deliver it. That's where there is a lot of business for a lot of tech players here, including us consultants. But what we realized, despite all of this, what's really missing is we never really thought about the impact on our customers. So we heard from a few people here about value. We heard from a few people about what does it really take to deliver in terms of cost. But these are still abstract. We're still looking at this very inside out. Just because we can build things, let's go, build it, sell it. We'll figure everything else out later. So as we shift the conversation towards value-based selling, which we do for a living, that rhymed, we thought that we should share 3 considerations with you before the build, before that framework that you saw on the previous page actually comes into action, right? So the first thing is, think from your customer's point of view, strategically, how does this help improve their business? What is my offering, whether it's X as a service, a hardware, a product, a service, what is that going to materially change for my clients, for my customers? And what is the true incremental value to their business? Right now, we're still talking about outcomes, outputs, activities, tasks. If we are selling to a customer, does this help them make more money? Does this help them do something faster? Does this help their workforce become smarter and move forward in ways that they want to? We need to identify that and put that on a page. I like what Sangram said, let's have it on a page. This is part of the question. Like, before we build, let's ask, what will this solve? The second thing which a lot of us operational people get tasked with is that we don't really ask, how will this affect their margins? Have we really thought about how we price and how we build will also affect them as they run some of this on their tech stack? Is this going to drive consumption on their own clouds? And what does this mean for not only what they pay us, but how this agent or this capability interacts with others? There's a lot of intricate complexity which we are all signing up for, which if we don't think about these questions, not only from our internal lenses, but also our customers, we are signing up again for a lot of risk without being clear about the value. And then finally, all of this impacts not only us as builders, but our clients, people, process, and tech. And if we don't think about all those things as we go and sell value, or even think about selling value, we are definitely walking in blind to that, right? So the next thing that we wanted to talk about in terms of how does this all come together and what does it mean is bringing it back to the back end. Realized value, when you have a good understanding of what that means in terms of what we are here as a product company, as a services company, as an X as a service company, once we have a good definition of that and a good understanding of delivery costs, the thing that enables them together is the execution layer, is the enablement layer, which is what we are calling the back-end capabilities. If you think about what does that mean in more simplistic terms, value should be the real economic impact that I mentioned. Is it top line? Is it bottom line? Is it about making things faster and helping their workforce becoming more efficient and smarter? And if so, can we quantify that? If you cannot quantify that, please don't say we do outcome-based pricing. It's a myth. So if you can quantify it confidently, then think about how much of that can we attribute to our offering. If you can't attribute it, we saw a spectrum from Kyle Poyer, one of our favorite consultants, also a consultant for a firm I used to work for. It's all about attribution. Can you really take 25, 30% of something if you can't clearly attribute the value of that thing to what you are selling? Not really. So the higher up you are on that attribution scale, the more value you can capture. And then it comes to the cost. A lot of work that James does is about how can we recognize revenue differently, not only for how we generate this, but what does this mean for our clients, right? A lot of the RevRec work that you do, James. So how do we make sure that we have a clear understanding of costs, not only for not for the overall package or a bundle, but also the underlying components, especially now with a lot of this AI driving heavy consumption, and what does that mean for how we should price based on how we want to attribute those costs to what we sell. So what does it mean if we leave these two things isolated? We are still having a very disconnected conversation, and we want to take you back to that unifying layer, which is the back-end capability, that how do I make sure that our product teams, our sales teams, our data, the data that we've been sitting on, whether it's consumption, how we build things, how we sell things, and our revenue platforms, the platforms that whether we use external platforms like Logisense or we build our own, how can we bring it all together early into the conversation to support this monetization model? So that's crucial. With that, we want to introduce this framework of an innovation roundtable. I was looking at a few other presentations which had circular frameworks. It looks like 8 is the magic number. Fortunately, we had 8 bubbles as well. What this is a framework that we are saying you, as the enablement layer of that go-to-market, should take to everyone else who we considered upstream back in the day to revenue. When we think about go-to-market, many of us thought that's the sales team, that's the marketing people, that's the product people. No, that's gone. It's all us. Innovation is happening so fast, so radically, and it's getting so out of control. It's our job to be the guardians of our company's margins. Margin matters. That's the money that goes to the bank. How do you do that? We want to elevate all of you. We want all of you to feel elevated, that you need to earn a seat on the table. We hope by the end of this, we'll give you enough reasons why. James will talk about that in a minute. But what this means is innovation should not happen in isolation with all these other players. It should not be something that just product does or engineering does, but it should be something that product, engineering, and marketing are doing together with other players, but they're also bringing competition in. We have served many clients who come up to us with very cute ideas. They want to innovate, monetize, and then we ask them, what's the next best alternative? And they are still looking at us as if we know all the answers. And it's very difficult as a consultant to tell them what the hell, but there are businesses which are still operating like that. So think about competition. Also bring in sales, success, and RevOps as well early on. These are the people closest to the ground. They understand your customers the best. They understand how your customers like to pay the best. If you want to reduce friction from selling things to your customers, which is, by the way, how we all make money, if you want to reduce friction for your channel partners, which is a major source of how revenue comes into our system, go talk to them. Go talk to them sooner than later. And finally, the enablement layer that we call, make sure you're talking to finance. Make sure you're talking to internal IT. Make sure you're talking to your biz ops / strategy ops / FinOps team, because they are the ones who will make all of this real. Ideas are cute, but execution eats them. For happy hour, actually, we are followed by happy hour, right? So, yeah. So we urge you to think about this innovation roundtable as something that you need to make sure it comes alive starting Monday, starting Friday. And why so? I'm going to pass over to James to talk to you about why this will create value for your business and why you should go and sell this to your organizations.
And I think if we hold on that last slide for just a moment, Himanshu.
Yep.
One of the key things that we've seen working with our clients, it's weird to think about pulling accounting, customer success, support, and billing into that upfront monetization strategy. A lot of the times it's exciting from a finance, product marketing to think about the growth, the money we can make, how we can monetize. You don't understand potentially the GAAP rules if you're public, or what that will do to your rev rec. And if you're private, either trying to get acquired or go public yourselves one day, at some point GAAP will catch up to you. And so it's not to bring them in to slow down the process. It's to bring them in to understand this change in model is really going to impact where your revenue hits, and you don't want to find out at your financial reporting at year end, why are the product lines we wanted to grow or be profitable bleeding money? It's because we didn't understand the rev rec and how it gets allocated. So that's a key thing that we would highlight. If you're not talking to success, support, sales, and I think Salesforce had it as well, if sales can't sell it, is it a good monetization model? If your customer doesn't understand it, is it a good monetization model? If you don't have the support team to send out notices that, hey, you're going through your consumption up to 80%. We had one client, they thought, great, we'll start charging overages because they jumped on the bandwagon, said everyone's charging for AI, we're gonna slap it on our premium tier in a good, better, best strategy, increase prices 20%. Everyone loved it. Board said, look at all this new growth. We're raking in the cash. What they realized, all the costs that came through a few months later, and starting to see the increasing cost that this 20% didn't account for. That's something that this model will kind of help bring through, and what we're hoping to kind of alleviate. When you make decisions quickly, not thinking about the long-term impacts of rev rec or the variable costs that AI introduces, you'll make mistakes. And especially in kind of the startup environment, everybody wants to monetize AI. Not everyone's profiting off of AI. And I think that's the big thing to keep in mind. Sometimes not implementing AI in your go-to-market may be the best strategy right now as you figure out the correct way to monetize. And so on the next slide here, where we've seen this go well, the innovation sandbox, as we call it, you want to define what you can monetize. What are we going to test? So think about the idea, maybe it's the product. And as Himanshu stated, a lot of the presentations told you, hey, you could package this as an add-on. You could do tier-based pricing. You could do pay-as-you-go. You can do credits. You can do tokens. There's a lot of ways to monetize, but how does your customer want to buy? So when you think about defining the problem, understand how does your customer procure? I think the easy example, how many of us remember the classic JCPenney tries to bring in the Apple's marketing exec, and JCPenney flipped over to the square, fair pricing? Failed. Even though those same customers who went to JCPenney would go to Apple and pay full price, no deals, no discounts. Why? Different channels, different markets, different perceptions for the same exact buyer. So you go to your buyer and you say, look, you guys are buying cloud services from the hyperscalers on pay-as-you-go, in commit models. It's the same exact thing, but it's not the same service. It's not the same outcomes, and it's not the same value that's delivered. So in that define stage, really understand, does your monetization fit the value that's being delivered to your customer? And the second piece in the define stage is, can you bill it? Can you support it? And can you sell it? Because there's nothing better than coming out with a great answer and billing telling you they can't do billing that way. Or you're going to have to go buy a new billing system and go through a 6-month, well, they tell you 6-month implementation, but a 1.5 years down the road, you're still paying the consultant bill. That's what we're good at, staying there forever once we get locked in. But in that case, define quickly. If you have a new feature, figure out the right meter, understand with accounting, rev rec, billing, can we bill this? Can we support this? Will it work? And then test with a pilot. I think for us, self-service is always kind of an easy channel to go through. If not self-service, look at your products, figure out maybe what's not your big basket mix or what drives your customers. Test. Implement the new module. Turn that add-on into usage-based. Run some A/B tests with those groups. They're going to get usage-based. These customers are going to get a tiered model. They're going to get tokens. Pilot. That will tell you very quickly what works and what doesn't work. You don't need to test across a lot of customers to find out quickly what they like, what resonates, and what they really don't like, and what will kind of cripple your model. So this innovation sandbox is what we really propose. Define what you're trying to value, how you can monetize it, test it quickly with pilot groups, whether that's through a self-service channel, whether that's through a smaller group that doesn't generate a ton of profitability or revenue, and run those A/B tests of the different models to see what's sticking, what works, and how they grows. And then make sure that it's validated all the way through RevRec into your billing and customer support. The key piece people mess up on. You get into the build phase, and we say, this is great. We love what we can monetize and put out there. If anything in scale and enable cannot support it, it's just a good idea. We have seen time and time again how many good ideas come into a company, come into a product line, come into a business, but they fail because they don't know how to scale or be enabled by the system around them. Where does this take a lot of us today? On the next slide here, we've heard a lot about the changes. I think if we look at the very first presentation from Logisense, 77% of enterprise software companies are already in a hybrid model. That hybrid model probably looks like those first two, primarily seat-based, and they threw in some secondary, maybe it's an add-on, maybe it's a premium tier, maybe it's a premium seat where there's AI capability in it, or maybe there's credits that they're using. We saw from Salesforce. Salesforce didn't drastically change their entire model, but they added new components as a secondary usage base to kind of test the waters and get there. Majority of us may find ourselves in this primary model. Start with that small piece of value. An easy way to think about what should go into my secondary model. Does it have variable cost? I think a lot of us who got into SaaS were super excited about eventually cost is flat, margins are great, we sit back and watch the cash come in. I used to work in industrials and aerospace and defense. It's not that great when cost is variable, things change all the time, and you're trying to make decisions off of that. SaaS is now having to deal with that. We now have the fun of variable cost, so keep that component separate from your core business until you understand how to monetize it properly. Again, we talked through the options. A lot of the other speakers had all the different ways that you can test, meter, package, put this together. But we expect majority will kind of sit in this first space for quite a while. Add-ons, new tiers, maybe a standalone product will be your secondary usage base for the AI components. Where we'll see a lot of companies transition kind of into the middle is usage may become your primary model. As you start to monetize and see how your customers like this, what resonates, how they buy, usage may be your primary. The reason we have seats there, and the way to think about seats is more of access versus just seats. Seats are being cannibalized. One, executives, private equity, everyone wants to capitalize on margin. Gen AI and these new capabilities, if you put AI in your model, somebody's getting removed from that organization from efficiency. So your seats are going to go away. That seats might change into platform. Mm-hmm. You can charge as a fee. Yeah. It might be access to certain modules. But there are certain components that if you think of your core business model today, they don't scale the value similar to your AI components that you may be trying to fit in. And so if you take those and wedge them into a usage-based model or this outcome world, the client's going to, if I was a buyer, why am I paying for that? This is a usage-based model. Why am I paying for what I don't use? And if you think about if anybody has any of their feature tracking and what customers really use, you'll realize very quickly if they start paying for what they use, it's going to be very little of what they're actually paying for. So if we move too much of our core capability, which today is like our seats access model, into usage, you may dilute your revenue very fast, and customers will nitpick, kick stuff out, and they'll start paying for what they're using, and it's not going to be good in a mid-sized startup. Very few will actually get to the true primary and secondary being usage. Where we see this is a lot of us may have a primary usage-based model, which could be flex credits or tiers that you start with, and then there's a variable, maybe pay-as-you-go for a certain module or for certain agents, certain workflows, or maybe those are outcome-based or output-based. So you can mix a hybrid usage model depending on the value delivered of your product. But the key thing that we want to highlight here, keep it simple. For a lot of us in this room, complexity doesn't help. Customers don't want to understand, I have tokens that are worth this, but I have to spend on this and go through this. Make it really easy for them and transition as you see fit. But I will say, at least from our experience, companies we worked with, jumping into usage-based and outcome and slapping AI in tends to lead to some pretty bad outcomes very quickly. If you don't think about it, test it, and as we said, how many of these have started with, what is your customer value? And I think that's kind of why we brought the customer angle up earlier. Yeah. If you don't understand the value it delivers to your customer, you'll miss the boat. From here, I think we have just a little bit, but go for it.
Yeah, I think we're close to wrapping up. We know we are between you and the happy hour. When you think about where have we done this work, we as KPMG, one of the bigger firms in advisory, we support companies which are $50 to $100 million in revenue and are growing at insane scale and are seriously trying to figure out how can they double, triple, quadruple it in the next year, 2 years, all the way to 50 billion plus revenue, not market cap, companies which are trying to figure out how do I maintain my share in the industry that I'm in, and if I'm acquiring a high growth company, how do I integrate that in? Many times, it creates insane demand for our work, and I'm so happy that they begin with complicating things. And then they have to bring in consultants because it becomes difficult to sell and identify real synergies. So our request to you, as the people who keep it real, is to tell them to keep it simple. It's a choice. We can make it. It comes with trade-offs, but simple is better for us and for our customers. We would not put some of our clients' names here because, that's a consultant's promise, but what we thought we will leave as inspiration for you. You did get a lot of inspiration from a lot of other people around, who's doing something well versus the other. There are a couple of very well-marketed companies. We heard so much about Snowflake today as pay-as-you-go. There are other companies too, but we think they did a pretty good job, are still doing a pretty good job. So if you want to see how consumption based on a combination of credits, pure that model can be used, get some inspiration. Clay is doing a lot of crazy marketing, but one of the things which they do well is the paper action model that they are using, along with the hybrid of how do I assist with some workflows, and how can I have a combination of a predictable and a usage-based model that I can charge for the value that I create. So we would suggest look at them for some inspiration. But most importantly, if we can leave you with 3 steps, we urge you to take on a different role. Don't think of the person that sits in what was known as the back office. We are all one office. It's one product, one customer, one set of value. What we urge you to do is to build consensus early on, think about the opportunities that exist in how you guys have seen products being developed and taken to market. What does GTM 2.0 look like, not tomorrow, but today, based on the reality we live in? And please fight for your seat on the table. On that note, assemble the team. Make sure that you are making noise, making positive noise, being the voice of the customer, being the voice of the field, to assemble the team early on and bring cross-functional players so that innovation can happen at scale, but for value, not chaos. And finally, execute, execute, execute. You have a plan, leverage the execution, leverage the innovation sandbox, and go and deploy the capabilities which can truly be delivered to clients, and it's not just a builder's fantasy. With that, we'd love to close it. We have the fake red glasses on James.
I finally earned my glasses.
You did. Today you did. But thank you so much for everything.
Thank you.